On November 13th, I did feel a sense of validation with the guilty plea that was entered that day. And today I hope to feel a sense of justice. But please let me be very clear that although he pled guilty to attempted rape, he was successful in raping me. I am asking you to hand down the maximum consecutive sentence of 16 years. Without this trial, you did not get the benefit of knowing how we got here. I moved into the apartment above Mr. and Mrs. Cross in August of 2015. They kindly introduced themselves, and we did develop a very friendly and respectful relationship. He walked my dogs for me twice a day, which is what gave him access and familiarity with my dogs. It's why they did not respond when he was in my apartment. It's why I gave him access to my apartment. I had no idea that a friend like that would use that to rape me. Many times he helped me out around my apartment. He'd move things. He'd help me up the snowy stairs. He was always a gentleman. He would often pick up items from the store after dark because he didn't want me out there, at dark. I didn't have to be worried about what was outside. I had to be worried about what was in my apartment building. I often felt safer because of them living down there. They, would hear when I came in early from work or something like that, and Mama Cross would call up, is that you? So I did. It was somebody in the apartment building, and it was very friendly and familiar. One time, a guest had followed him in through the locked door, and he came up a couple minutes later to make sure I knew him and that it was okay. But I had to worry about him being the one that would scar me for life, even though I genuinely cared for both of them, and I tried to reconcile those feelings as I sat in the hospital for 6 hours getting a rape kit, filing charges, and going through this process. But I do see him now as the monster that he is, and not a friend or anything like that. He's the worst kind of sexual predator, one who can enter the home of someone who trusted him, violate her, and have no remorse about looking her in the eye again. He basically groomed me over the course of 1.5 years like any other sexual predator would do. He gained my trust, as well as the trust and familiarity of my dogs, and used it against me to rape me in the safety and security of my own home. This occurred while I was sleeping. I woke up to this in my home. People have asked why I didn't fight, and the answer is I couldn't. I've had that silent scream. Your body just goes into paralysis. You can't do anything. I was aware that he carried a knife, and I knew if I tried to fight, I'd have a 50-50 chance, so I did the best that I could, and I continued. He thought that I was asleep or passed out the whole time, but I wasn't. When he left, my dogs thumped their tail, and I don't know why it bothers me so much, but they thumped their tail, excited to see him, and he told them to shh. And he walked right down and went right into his apartment and faced his wife. I called the police and did everything I was supposed to. I called the police within the hour. I preserved the evidence despite the overwhelming urge to get the filth out of me. I did everything I could, and when the cops showed up, I viewed the body cam, and the first thing I say to them is, please save me. And it's obvious that the shock, the fear, everything was on the cam. Now, mind you, he did all of this while his wife was right below me, right below my bedroom. Don't think for a moment that because this was not a violent assault where I suffered physical injury, that I do not suffer. Since then, I have had bouts of insomnia, but I have had medication and counseling to help that, and I am now up to about 5 hours per night, except for the last few nights. During the first week, I hardly slept. I didn't eat. My regular bodily functions, 10 days late from my period, didn't eat, didn't sleep. And those aren't things that you can control. So this shook me to my core. I had an underlying physical tension across my chest. It was like a clamp, and I had that for quite some time until I finally saw a doctor and got the anti-anxiety, and a heavy sedative to get me over this. Today, there's no amount of fluoxetine that's going to help me with this, but matter of fact, Monday night I became physically ill, stressing. I've also become more reclusive. There are 2 people that I allow into my home because I don't want my dogs familiar with anybody. I've thought about that. What if my dogs weren't familiar? Wouldn't they have responded differently? Would I have woke up? I've laid awake many nights thinking of all the what ifs. Maybe I shouldn't be so friendly with my neighbors. Maybe I should keep my door closed all the time. I've added screeching alarms to all of my doors, front, back, and to my bedroom doors. I don't want anybody to know my dogs. I want them to bark whenever anybody comes close. When you go without lack of sleep or minimal sleep that's restless, when you have the anxiety and depression that I've had, it turns you into simply a zombie of yourself. There are days that I don't get out of bed when I don't have to, and there are days that I struggle to get out of bed when I must. Some days, I'm okay, and I really am some days. And then out of nowhere, this will sucker punch me. There are times I might see somebody on the bus or the shuttle that reminds me of him, and that's enough for my day. I have tried the recovery. I have undergone weekly counseling sessions with the Rape Crisis Center, which have recently moved to bi-weekly sessions. I still question the whys. I question what I could have done, what I shouldn't have done. I've questioned a lot about this, but I know the only one that has the answers to this is the rapist. He's the only one who can answer why he did this. He continued for a long time with the lie that this was consensual, and I assure you, it was not consensual under any circumstances. The thought of it turns my stomach. As you continue with recovery, I think we're all familiar with the Me Too movement. I cannot get away from the triggers. If I watch entertainment news, it is there. If I watch political news, it is there. If I watch local news, it is there. I'm glad that it is there so that women feel the support to stand up, but I can't get away from it. I see all of the comments. Well, why'd she go out with them? Why'd she do this? Why did she stay at her job? Why this? All of it is victim blaming. I blame myself at night, lying there while my mind escapes. It's ingrained in us to blame the victim, but don't this time blame the rapist. He is the only one who's responsible for this. As one friend told me, recovery is not a straight line, and she's right. I found it's more like giving an angry 2-year-old a crayon in your dining room wall. There's like that. You might have some days where you go up, and there's other days it's just a ball of yarn that you gave to a bunch of cats. And someday, I may let someone unknown to my dogs come in, but today's not that day. And someday, the physical tension will be gone without the meds, but today's not that day. Someday, the fits of crying will be gone, but today's not that day. Someday, the bubbling lava of hate, anxiety, frustration that is always simmering will be gone. Today's not been that day. Someday, the anxiety and depression will be gone, but today's not it. And someday, I might get 8 full hours of restful sleep, but I guarantee you this has not been it. Before I moved into my apartment, I checked the sexual offender registry, and there was nothing listed in my building. Unfortunately, even with this prior rape, that was before the SOR was in effect, but he's not even on the lease, so it would have never have shown up anyway. I wouldn't have been protected, even though I took the right steps. You're aware. I know that you've seen his record, and I know that Owen's going to get out and talk more about it, but he's got 4 decades of crime. He has spent time in prison in every one of those decades. He's long past rehab, long past that. He hasn't learned. He's got no respect for the people who trusted him, his wife, or the law. He will never become a productive, contributing member of society. Never. I'm begging you to protect society against a sexual predator. Protect us against this career criminal. He is the worst kind of monster. He is a repeat sexual offender who preys not just on anyone, but somebody who truly trusted him. He has blamed me for his actions.
How did he blame you?
Telling them that it was consensual. I opened the door naked. I did not, and I never have, and I will not. I've had to answer to that. And of course, Owen was doing his job and asking me that. But that is never, this was only a relationship of respect and friendship. You need a Rex roll of toilet paper, run up and get it.
I'm not
Yeah,
blaming you.
I know,
don't want
I
you
know.
to leave with that impression.
I know that you
I read the report and I didn't see any indication of that. That's why.
Yeah, it's just through the trial prep. He was
Okay.
saying it was consensual and that I had opened the door and begged him and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And so that's where I get that from. I've told you about some of the impact it's had, but I have bridges yet to cross. Because someday I will date. And someday I will have relations again. I don't know how that's going to be, so I can't even begin to tell you about the impact of that. But at this point, again, there's no hope for rehab. 8 years isn't nearly long enough for him, and 16 years isn't either, but it's the best that we have to work with. So I'm asking you, make it consecutive. Give him the max and make it consecutive. We can't let him back out. I don't care what his age is. He's still a threat.